Greetings and welcome to the 12th or 13th episode of Morrowind Modding Interviews. As always, I'm your host, Dark Elf Guy, and with me today is Scrawl, one of the programmers at OpenMW. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview.
No problem.
And right away, we're going to start off with a few basic questions. The first of which is, when did you first start playing Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general?
I started playing Morrowind sometime around 2005. Couldn't tell you when exactly. It's actually one of my very first video games that I ever played, and I really liked it. Spent a lot of time in the game.
Have you played a lot of other RPGs, like the Gothic series or the other Elder Scrolls games at all?
Old Elder Scrolls game? No, never really tried those. Gothic? Not really. I've played Neverwinter Nights. I quite like that. Neverwinter Nights 2. Other than that, not too many RPGs. Action RPGs. Diablo 2. Not too many open world RPGs otherwise.
And how did you come up with your forum name?
That's actually a really great question, because I don't really remember that much. I've been using this nickname as long as I've been using the internet, basically. All I can remember is that I was playing StarCraft with my older brother and I needed an email address. So somehow my brother came up with this name. I have no idea how. I didn't know what the word meant at the time, but I just liked the sound of it. So for some reason I've just stuck with this nickname and just used it ever since on the internet. I mean, once you've got a nickname, not really much point in changing it. I like the sound of the word.
Oh yes, I've always been a firm believer in using just one nickname across the internet. Dark Elf Guy, that's my same name everywhere.
Just convenient. Yeah, I wish I could remember where this name came from, but I have no idea.
Oh, anyway, going on with the next question. You're one of the main programmers working on OpenMW these days, but what made you decide to join a big team project like OpenMW in the first place?
Well, the first big motivation for me is being able to play Morrowind natively on Linux. I mean, you can play it using Wine, but it's really not a great experience. The controls menu doesn't work, Morrowind graphics extender doesn't work, and of course there are all the same crashes and bugs that you also get in the Windows version of Morrowind. So when I learned about OpenMW, I got really excited for it. But I didn't actually join the project at that point, because I wasn't much of a programmer. I didn't know C++ or any game development. A few years later, I had learned C++ and I had written a few smaller games, and I was actually working on this other game called Stunt Rally, which is an open source racing game. And it was actually using the Ogre 3D graphics engine, which by coincidence is the same 3D engine that OpenMW is also using. So then I had some experience with this engine. I knew a thing or two about shaders, and well, then I noticed that I might actually be able to help out OpenMW. And that's when I registered at the forums, and Zinni got me some tasks to do. My first task was the new sky renderer. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, that was almost exactly 3 years ago. I've come a long way since then.
So I didn't know this before, but you've sort of been in developing your own games, so have you released anything?
Oh yeah, well, I didn't write the whole game. I was just a contributor to the game, but it's released, yes. I was pretty much working on the graphics only. Some other guy made the physics and everything.
Very interesting, and is there something in particular that draws you to OpenMW or modding in general?
Well, Morrowind is a massive open world game. It's just so huge. There's a lot of potential for new things you can add, lots of potential for fixes. It's just so big. There's bound to be tiny imperfections all over the place that you just get that itch, you know, you want to fix this, or you want to add this or that in the game, or you think you can do better than the original developers did. So that's really it for me. I think that's really for most people who get into modding, probably.
Oh yes, I've heard that from modders quite often. And just out of curiosity, with Open Morrowind, what's it like to work on a big team like that? A lot of us in the modding community are sort of lone wolves, so to speak, but I imagine a big team like Open Morrowind has a lot of its own customs, policies, and rules that you have to follow.
Sure, sure. So, well, the usual workflow would go something like this. First, you pick a task from the issue tracker. That's where we've listed all the features and bugs that we need to address. So you pick one of them that looks doable to you. And if you can't find anything suitable, you can ask on the forums and we'll give you something to do. So then when you know what you need to do, you will assign the ticket to yourself. That means you're working on it. You'll start working on the code, see what you can do, see if you can fix this or add this. And yeah, so when you think it's ready to be included in the official version, then you will submit a pull request. And the pull request is, well, we'll see all the code that you've changed, and will then review it and let you know what could be improved, what needs to be changed in order to adhere to our guidelines. And usually there will be a few amendments you have to do before the pull request can be merged. And yeah, then it will go into the next release. That's really it.
So, you guys use GitHub for this, right? This sounds very similar to a lot
Yeah,
of...
we have GitHub for the pull requests. We don't use GitHub for the issue tracking. We have Redmine on our website, actually quite nice. And of course, there's still the forum for technical discussions and all that. That's really all the infrastructure we have.
Oh yes, I was just about to say that it sounded an awful lot like the GitHub procedures I'm familiar with. What all do you do for the Open Morrowind project? Is there a particular role that you do, or are you involved in a lot of various tasks with the project?
Well, when I was just starting out, the idea was that I would mostly work on graphics. But later on, I started taking more and more roles. First, I added a few things in user interface. Then I was working on game mechanics. And at this point, I'm pretty much working on everything. I've seen the whole code. Yeah. So yeah, really a lot of various tasks. It's actually not only coding that takes up a lot of my time, also reviewing changes from other contributors, going through the new bug reports every day, well, forum discussions. Anyway, so back to your question, I would really love to be able to specialize in one aspect of the engine, but we can't really afford to do that because we don't have enough developers who would then tackle on the other aspects. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do have a ton of developers. There's actually over 100 people who've contributed at some point, but most of these people just come and go nowadays. What is really the most useful are, well, We need people that stick around for a long time and, well, become knowledgeable about a specific area in OpenMW and can just work on their own without much guidance. Anyway, another problem that having just one particular role would be that it's becoming a bit difficult to split up tasks at this stage in the project, because we've more or less implemented all the features, and well, it's more or less just bug fixing at this point, changing the existing code basically. And well, one problem is by the time you have checked out a bug and can say, oh, so this belongs in this area, maybe I should ask this person what to do. By the time you've done that, you've kind of half solved the bug already, so you can't split that up very well. So at this point we really need people who have a good overview on the project and all the various components. We can't split up the work very well, unfortunately.
Since you mentioned the number of people working on the project, I was sort of curious. From the outside, OpenMorrowind looks like it has quite a few developers, but how many of those would you say are working on the project on any given week?
Not too many. Maybe 3 to 6. Depends.
That's actually a much smaller number than I would have expected, at least given the amount of activity.
Yep, for the most part it's just me, Zinni, and 2 or 3 other people. Most people just do 1 or 2 contributions or just have periods of inactivity. Well, it's a lot of work to keep up with the recent developments and maintain your code, so it's a big time commitment. Most people just give up after a while, I found. A lot of time and effort.
A lot of modding projects seem to sort of run into that problem, where they'll have members that are inactive after a very short period of time, and only about a dozen or so.
Well, can't blame them.
Yes,
it's not like they're paid or anything, so...
This is true. This is true. Now, recently, in an interview that we did with Zinni, he mentioned that you guys at OpenMorrowind have been testing a lot of mods with the OpenMorrowind engine and running into a lot of problems with poorly error-checked scripts and the like. Are you still running into a lot of that?
Yes, indeed. So, for anyone who hasn't seen the last interview with Zinni, the problem we're running into is that the script compiler in Morrowind doesn't do a lot of error checking. So, you've made a typo somewhere in the script or some other mistake, there's a big chance the compiler will just ignore it. It won't tell you anything is wrong. And then you get into the game and your script just doesn't work, or it doesn't work like you expected it to, and you have no idea why, because compiler just doesn't tell you. So let's say you're passing too many arguments to a function and they're just ignored, or you have missing quotes in your arguments, and so actually what you thought was one argument is actually multiple arguments. It just won't tell you about these errors. And these errors are all over the place. Not just in user-created mods, Bethesda has made these kind of mistakes. Actually also in the official localizations of Morrowind. You know, there's French and German versions, for example. And there are a lot of errors in those too. So it turns out when they were translating the game, they had to edit the scripts as well, because there is user-visible text in these scripts. And when they did that, they had a typo here or there, or they messed up the arguments and introduced a lot of strange errors that we now have to find with our compiler. And yeah. That's just what we have to do around here. We have to pay for Bethesda's mistakes and try to think of ways to contain the damage. And so user-created mods are also a big problem. Basically, any mod that contains a lot of scripts, there's a big chance that it won't work in OpenMW yet, because there is a script error somewhere. And we're actually slowly making progress in this area. So it's getting better with every release, I would say. So on the one hand, we're getting fixes into OpenMW to, well, be more accepting of these errors, basically. So, well, we're making the errors into warnings, basically. So you see a warning in the log file, but the script will actually work and you can play your mod. On the other hand, there are actually also some mod authors who are fixing the problems that we are pointing out. So that is also a big help. But I don't think we can expect this to happen for all Morrowind mods ever created. A lot of people just aren't around anymore. It's an old game and, yeah, maybe not interested in the game anymore or their mods. That also happens a lot. So I think that eventually it would be nice if we had a version of OpenMW that works with all user-created mods for the vanilla engine. That would be nice at some point, but it's not really my top priority at the moment. There's still some more important issues for me, like better performance, that I want to address first. But yeah, really big problem. It makes me angry sometimes. Stupid amount of code that we have to put in just in the name of compatibility. But yeah, I think it's still important, because when people try OpenMW, they'll see all of their favorite mods that aren't working, and they'll be like, huh, but, well, this works in the vanilla engine, so OpenMW must be broken, right? But it's really a bit more complicated than that. You can get into lengthy arguments on which side the problem really is.
Oh yes, the script compiler in Morrowind is somewhat nefarious. I'm sure practically every Morrowind modder has experienced this at one point in time, where they'll write a script, go in game to test it after no errors popped up, and find that the script doesn't work, and then they'll have to go back into the construction set, reload the mod, look at the script, and just go line by line, trying to find where the mistake was.
That sounds like fun. I'm glad I'm not a modder. Yeah, so in general, it's proving to be really difficult to get OpenMW compatible with all these user-created mods. Some of them have these script errors that are causing a lot of pain on our side. Some of them are depending on some strange functionality or some bugs in the original engine that aren't really documented, that no one has ever written anything about. Sometimes there are mods with meshes in them that are using some feature that we haven't seen before or something like that. And most of the time it's just trial and error, you know. That's mostly how we have to work. There's not a whole lot of documentation we can use. Just trial and error, trial and error. I still have no idea how Galzia's character development actually works. They're using some really strange technique there to get attributes over the limit of 100. I have no clue how that's supposed to work. Some mods are maybe just so broken or strange that you may want to rewrite them for OpenMW. But I hope that for something like 99% of mods, well, they should hopefully just work eventually. We're getting better with every release. Anyway, so if you've done any scripting for Morrowind, I think it would be well worth your time if you take 10 minutes, try it out in OpenMW, see if there's any errors with the scripts. This will help you find actual problems in your mod that are also a problem using the original engine. You just haven't found them. Or you have found them, but you haven't found out what's wrong yet. So it could be really helpful.
A very good advice, and this sort of brings me to another question that I wasn't originally going to ask, but a lot of mods are dependent on Morrowind scripting extender, and they obviously have different scripting functions. Is there any plan to make those compatible with Open Morrowind?
Not at the moment, no. So, well, it's maybe a little early to start thinking about that, but so far the general position has been that we will offer additional scripting functionality that, well, greatly surpasses the scripting extender capabilities and will be a lot nicer to use. So we may not want to add support for that. I don't think there's too many mods using it. But I think what we will offer eventually will work quite differently anyway, so may not make a lot of sense. But it's definitely possible. I mean, it's open source after all. If someone wants to add it, they can. Question is if it's going to be added in the official version.
Very interesting, and sort of going on to a new question here. What's the planning process like for Open Morrowind? Is there some decision process to decide what goes into each public release?
Not that much of a decision process, actually. So Zinni has put up the rule that until version 1.0 we will only add features that are in vanilla Morrowind. Because that alone will be a huge achievement on its own, of course. So we really need to focus and get there as soon as possible. So that means the planning process is actually very simple. We just have to look at the features in vanilla Morrowind, arrange them into some logical order, and that's our roadmap, basically. And other than that, it's really whatever people are working on will usually go into the next release. I'm sure that after version 1.0 we might need some more organization. But for now it's fine.
Speaking of 1.0, in the interview we did with Zinni, he mentioned that he believes Open Morrowind will make its 1.0 release sometime this year. Now that it's a couple months later, do you believe that's still possible?
I don't think so. There's actually a lot left to do. Right now there's 4 pretty big items on my list. The first being performance issues, which is a very complicated topic because most of these performance issues are not actually in our code but in the Ogre 3D graphics engine that we're using. So the original plan was to update to a new version of Ogre 3D, the 2.0 or 2.1 version, but it's not released yet, and also there are some features we are using that are no longer included in the new version. So we decided that Ogre 3D was never that optimal for us in the first place, so we decided to move to a new graphics engine, OpenSceneGraph. There was actually a big announcement recently. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Oh yes, I saw that on the website and I was reading about it on Morrowind Reddit. And has that move added a lot of work to the workload?
Well, definitely some. It's going to take a while. But it will pay off in the long run. It will probably take a few months to get that completed. And the next item is improving the pathfinding AI, which is not very good at the moment. Probably will need to be rewritten from scratch. was actually written by 3 or 4 different people, and none of them are with the project anymore. So yeah, we'll probably rewrite that, because I'm not so familiar with the code and it doesn't look overly great to me. There's a couple of issues at the moment, like NPCs running in circles and getting stuck, that sort of stuff. That definitely needs to be improved. Next item would be finishing the save game importer. We actually have a vanilla Morrowind save file importer, so you can play your original Morrowind characters in OpenMW, but it's in a very early stage at the moment. And this is a lot of work because we don't actually know the format of the save files. Of course, there's no documentation, next to none. We don't know what all the various data in it means. Pretty much just have to find out by trial and error. And the other thing is that the more that I look at these save files, I actually find some of what we've already implemented in OpenMW not very accurate to the original game. So yeah, the more I look at these files, the more that pops up, and I'll have to rewrite things that we've already written. And well, the fourth item, last but certainly not least, would be fixing a lot of bugs. Current count is something over 200, which isn't actually that bad, but the problem is, well, as soon as you fix 10 of them, there's gonna be 5 new ones, so that's also going to take a while. So all in all, I think this year is not going to happen. Maybe next year.
You mentioned the pathing AI, and with NPCs running around in circles. Are you sure that's not just staying true to the original game? Morrowind has never had very good pathing AI.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's actually still a bit worse than the original pathing, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, the original is not good whatsoever. Well, the problem is that there really isn't a lot of path grid information in the data files. In most exteriors or out in the wilderness, there's just no path grid, so the AI just has to guess where to go, pretty much. But yeah, the escort missions are not really fun at all. I agree.
Oh yes, I've noticed this in the past, is that really the only exterior cells that have any path grids are usually cities, and in between on roads and in wilderness, there's nothing really there.
Yeah. We can actually, well, I mean, we could try to generate navigation meshes from the environment. Yeah, so you'd have path grids everywhere, basically, but that's a post version 1.0 feature, definitely. But it would be very interesting.
Now, navigation meshes, that's something that Oblivion and Skyrim has, isn't it?
I don't know. Might be. Are they automatically generated, or do you create them in the CS? I haven't really modded Oblivion or Skyrim that much.
I've looked at the Skyrim construction set a little bit, and I seem to remember that there was some sort of a navigation mesh-like piece that you would place on the world that would sort of automatically give the AI some navigation. Interiors still use some normal path gridding to a certain extent, I think.
Ah, I see. So you create points and connect them and have to manually place them.
Oh yes, and you can also automatically generate them for interiors anyway. Don't have much experience with exteriors. Sort of going into a similar topic, what are the features you're most looking forward to implementing into OpenMorrowind after the 1.0 release, assuming you stick around?
Well, I will definitely stick around. I think the prospect of these post 1.0 enhancements is really what keeps me going all this time. I mean, what we're doing now is really just the boring groundwork, right? And yeah, I think after version 1.0, the fun is really going to start. So what I'm most looking forward to would be making the game look better. The first item on my list would be increasing the view distance and rendering distant objects. We actually have a distant terrain feature already, but it doesn't show objects like rocks or houses. So that would be really exciting. Then the next item would be compositing effects like ambient occlusion, high dynamic range. Most of these are probably in Morrowind graphics extender already. But we can actually do a lot more. And the next thing would be compositing effects like ambient occlusion and high dynamic range, which you can actually think you can get most of these in Morrowind graphics extender, but there's also some techniques that wouldn't be possible there. I'm looking at deferred shading as a possibility, which would basically allow you to use a lot more lights than you normally could. I think there is usually a limit of 8 lights on the same object any given time. So we could remove that limit. Then I'd like to have grass and vegetation layers. Well, basically painting them like you could paint terrain textures. That would be great, not having to hand place every single object. And yeah, basically having a brush that you can use that will randomly scatter objects around with random variations in size and so on. Grass rendering would be another topic. I mean, you can do grass in the original game, but I don't think it's very efficient. You need, well, you need a new mesh for each grass blade. You could have a lot more grass if it was rendered more efficiently. A wind shader would be nice to have grass and vegetation sway with the wind. Better looking water, better looking shadows are definitely going in, and volumetric clouds. That is, I haven't thought a lot about the details yet, but that would be pretty nice.
That terrain brush you mentioned, that actually sounds very fascinating. The idea of, using a brush to place randomized objects and make wilderness detailing a lot easier. I know the Far Cry 2 editor had something similar, and it was absolutely fantastic. You could generate entire jungles in a matter of minutes.
Yep, I've seen that in other editors, actually.
Going on to some less Open Morrowind related questions. Do you like to listen to a lot of music while you mod/work on Open Morrowind? And if so, what do you like to listen to?
Yeah, of course. I couldn't imagine coding without music. That would be a little boring. So I like to listen to techno, house, and minimal mostly. Most kinds of EDM really, except maybe drum and bass or dubstep. Particularly like the Essential Mix on Radio 1. Great stuff.
Now, I don't know how much you follow the Morrowind modding community, but are there any mods or modders that currently have your attention outside the Open Morrowind project?
Nope, not really. I must admit I don't really play the game at the moment. It's been a few years since I've last played it, but I'll probably get into it again when OpenMW 1.1 or 1.2 is released.
What do you think about the other Elder Scrolls games, like Skyrim, Oblivion, and the Elder Scrolls Online, particularly in comparison to Morrowind?
I've played quite a bit of Oblivion. I was pretty excited when I finally got a computer that was able to handle it. I think it's a pretty good game. Not as much lore or depth as Morrowind, but I think it has some improvements actually on the game mechanics. And of course it's nice looking. Pretty impressive graphics for the time it was released. So, yep, I think it's a good game. Skyrim, I haven't played that much. Couldn't really get into it. I'm not sure why. Maybe I don't like the setting. Elder Scrolls Online, I haven't played at all. I don't know much about it. I'm not really so interested in MMORPGs. Don't really have that much time these days for playing anyway.
Now, if you're familiar with Oblivion's construction kit or Skyrim's construction kit, are there any features from those that you'd like to see implemented into Open Morrowind?
I actually don't know the Skyrim scripting language or Oblivion, but I do know that the Morrowind language is very basic and it's very easy to improve on it. We have already some planned improvements there. I think you can find a thread by Zinni somewhere on the forums. So yeah, there's a big wish list there. But I don't think we have to look at Oblivion or Skyrim for suggestions. I think there's enough as is.
Now, I understand the OpenCS is still a bit behind in development compared to Open Morrowind, but do you think it'll be ready for Open Morrowind's 1.0 release? And do you believe it'll be just as easy to use as Morrowind's construction set for novice modders?
Well, at the current rate, I don't think it's going to be ready for OpenMW 1.0. Of course, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. But I don't think it's too much of a problem that it's lagging behind. Because there are a lot of post 1.0 enhancements that we can add even without our own editor. In particular with graphics features, for example. We don't really need the editor for most of them, so it's not like we'd be completely stuck. Of course, it will be pretty exciting once we do have it. Well, is it going to be as easy to use as the CS? Probably not. I mean, the construction set is, well, it's kind of as simple as it gets, right? So with OpenCS, I think it's going in a kind of in a different direction. It's a lot more powerful. There is a built-in scripting language actually for filtering tables, for finding the objects that you're looking for. You can arrange your workspace in any way you'd like with the various dock windows that you can open. It's a lot nicer to use if you have multiple monitors, for example. It's a totally different editor. I really wouldn't compare them. But it's probably a little bit steeper learning curve, I would say. I don't think you can get any more simple than the construction set. I'm pretty excited for it. Even though I'm not really modding, but
Oh yes, the original Morrowind construction set was, well, sort of the first of its kind, really, in, the RPG world, and it was very easy to use. But obviously it could definitely use some of those more advanced features, like the search function you mentioned, definitely sounds useful. I think everyone's had that problem of trying to find an object and not being able to find it right away.
yeah, I think everyone's got their own big wish list for it.
Now, do you believe that Open Morrowind can cause a golden age for the Morrowind modding community, as many of us hope?
Sure, could be. It definitely makes it possible to create new types of mods that you couldn't create before. So I think OpenMW could be the platform for this golden age, but of course it depends on what the community will do with it. I mean, we're really only giving you the tools, and it's up to the mod community to decide what to do with them. And so I would say the potential is there.
Now, what do you think makes the Morrowind modding community so vibrant after more than a decade?
It's a great game. It's a great world to get lost in, very unique art design, and the quest design actually encourages getting lost in the world, which is quite nice, and kind of missing from the later Elder Scrolls games, sadly. But another reason I think is that the construction set is very easy to use. It's very easy to get started making a mod. You don't need to be a programmer, you don't need to know anything about texturing or modeling. You can just start creating something right away. And yeah, I think it just hits that sweet spot. It's very easy to use, but still reasonably powerful. I think that's why we're seeing a big community.
Oh yes, many other modding communities for other games have sort of disappeared after 10 years, and here we are on the verge of 13 years, and the community is still definitely going strong.
Yep. Well, as I mentioned before, it's an open world game. There is just endless potential for things to be added.
Oh yes, definitely. And do you think there's anything the Morrowind modding community should be doing in order to continue to expand and grow in the coming years?
Well, if you want more growth, I think more team projects would be nice. More organization, more quality control. You want to bring more people in, introduce the game to new audiences, then I think we would need more compilation projects as well, like the Morrowind Sounds and Graphics overhaul, or Skywind. I mean, Skywind isn't technically Morrowind, but you get the idea.
Oh yes, there was some work on newer compilation projects after the Morrowind Graphics and Sounds overhaul. There was supposed to be one that worked on gameplay and immersion, but that project, I believe, sort of just...
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but unfortunately the project sort of stalled out. As far as I know, it's not being worked on right now.
Oh, too bad.
Oh yes, the Morrowind Graphics and Sounds overhaul was actually supposed to be part of a series of compilations that were going to cover a particular area of Morrowind, and Kingpix just sort of stopped after the Graphics and Sounds overhaul.
Actually, he did stop by our forums, I remember, and said that he might create a version of the overhaul for OpenMW, but I'm not sure what happened to that, or if that's still a thing. I don't know.
Oh yes, he disappeared for a while, and he recently just appeared again. He showed up on the Bethesda forums, and he said he was working on an update for the Morrowind Graphics and Sounds overhaul, so we'll see.
Oh, cool.
But anyway, sort of wrapping up, is there any advice you'd like to give to budding new Morrowind modders out there looking to release their first mod, or possibly modders looking to join a team project, like Open Morrowind?
One advice I could give is make sure to communicate a lot about what you are doing. There's nothing more frustrating than spending hours of work and only then realizing that there was a better way to do it, or that someone else was already working on it, or that no one actually wanted this particular feature in the first place. I think that goes for all team projects, really. Just make sure to communicate.
Finally, is there anyone in the community you'd like to give a shout out to?
Sure. Shout out to Harnchamd. That's how you pronounce it. Probably not, but I tried. Well, he's done a lot of the research for OpenMW for the Morrowind game mechanics. I don't think OpenMW would be anywhere near as complete as it is now without his work. And actually, you should get him on the interview someday. That would be really interesting. So done the code patch and NGEXE.
Oh yes, his name has popped up quite often for doing an interview with, and haven't quite gotten around to seeing him in an interview request. That's something I'm planning to do. The Morrowind modding community certainly owes him quite a lot. You know, for the Morrowind graphics extender and the Morrowind code patch, as you mentioned. We wouldn't have a fraction of the community that we have today without those core bug fixes and graphics expanded capabilities.
Yep, I agree.
Anyway, that's pretty much all the questions I have for you, so thanks again for agreeing to do this interview.
Pleasure to be here.